This episode is sponsored by The Path, the coach-guided membership designed to help you make alcohol small and irrelevant in your life by removing your true desire to grab that next drink. Our science-based, compassion-led program allows you not only to shift your behavior and your relationship around alcohol, but more importantly, uncover and reprogram your subconscious conditioning and neural connections that have been keeping you stuck for years. With daily live breakthrough coaching, an intimate and supportive community, regular peer-to-peer connection calls, and a complete vault of resources, this is where your path to total freedom and effortless enjoyment of your new way of life begins. Join us at nakedmindpath.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. And today I'm here with Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here and honored and a little nervous, but more honored and excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes. I'm so happy that you're here. So we got to meet because at Startup Grind, where Arlen Hamilton and I were able to speak to entrepreneurs because of you about alcohol. And that was just the coolest thing. But let's get to that kind of later. And let's right now just sort of back up and focus on you and your story. And so with drinking for you, where did it all start?
Yeah. Well, first of all, can I just say that I wanted to thank you and all your listeners, because I cannot tell you how many countless times and hours that your podcast, Annie, and your listeners just gave me. It helped influence me and change all those years of bad thinking and start looking at the truth of what we're talking about with alcohol. So thank you for that. So
yay.
And what's so cool is I think we all have very similar foundations, but yet different paths to where we went or how far down the path we went. So for me, I guess I can just start with, we drank in high school, right? Like it was just something, it was just normal, right? It wasn't like an out of control thing. You would drink on the weekends, or if someone had an occasional party, it's just kind of what you did, right? I don't ever remember it being like a problem, or it wasn't. It was just something you did. You almost still hated it a little bit, right? Because it made you feel bad, and you only did it. It wasn't quite as routine. But then I went to college, and drinking was very much in the college culture. I was in a sorority and all that jazz, and you just drank, right? Same thing, but it was very social, right? It was a social drinking, and still it was that where you almost like kind of enjoyed when you didn't have to go out, right? Because you geared up for it, and you would I love to drink, like I was definitely going to be like a ringleader, but it still wasn't I don't think it ever. I still was a social drinker, right? Like same thing. I get out of school, I'm a social drinker. I mean, I definitely was going to be the ringleader, like ordering another bottle of wine. That was going to be me. But I don't think I ever really remembered it being something where I was like, something's not right, until later on, probably in my I was 28. My fiance was killed in a car accident, and I didn't see it at the time. I can look back in hindsight and see my drinking journey, and I can see where I went from someone who was a social drinker, life of the party, to someone who drank to escape. And I didn't even see it happening. It was so insidious. Like I can see it now, but it became kind of an escape. And I didn't really even realize it. And so, you move on, life goes on. And I kind of I carry that increase of drinking a little bit into, my 30s but it wasn't, Annie, it's kind of similar to like you talk about in your book. It wasn't like I was very productive. I was super disciplined in all areas of my life, very successful in my career, good mom, all that stuff. But this one thing, right? Just this one thing kept me from being, it just kept me down, right? Like I knew it was a problem, but I didn't know that it was okay to talk about it, because this was 12, 15 years ago. If you dare said that you had a problem with alcohol, then you were an alcoholic, right? Like It was two extremes. You were either an alcoholic or responsible drinker. And I'm like, well, I'm not that, but I'm certainly not a responsible drinker. So I was like stuck, and I didn't know what to say, but I knew in my soul it was not right. Like I just knew, like, this isn't healthy. Amy, you wake up at 4:15 and go run 5 miles and you take care of yourself. But like, your book talks about it, and it's so true. I had massive cognitive dissonance about this thing, right? And it causes so much mental pain.
Yeah.
So I kind of just struggled with it, knew it was something weird. I mean, like I tried everything, Annie. I read all the, I read all the books. I, would, the willpower instinct, the power of habit. Cause I just got to figure out like, how come I can't willpower my way through this thing? Right. I remember the first time getting the first inclination or kind of light that, wait, this may not be a me thing. It's was when, Jason Vale's book, Kick the Drink. Did you ever read that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The first time I read that, I started, he talks a little bit, it's the first time I've been introduced to someone saying, wait, hold on. Think about when you first feel that high. You haven't even drank the alcohol yet.
Yeah. And
so I remember being like, oh my God, this is psychological. This is science-based. And I think, Annie, for like 2 weeks, I was like, and this was years ago, right? This is 2012. I was like, that's it. I'm never drinking again. Like, I thought I had it down, right? But I didn't.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, because then I was like, but wait, I need it. And this is so embarrassing to say, but this is true. I was so mad that I had read that book because, like, the quote, a mind once enlightened can never be darkened again. Like, yeah. I knew the information now. And I was like, oh God. So I went outside in the big trash can and I shoved it all the way down in the trash can because I just didn't want to see it anymore. But the knowledge was already implanted in there. So I kind of went on my own way of doing, like, I got to figure this out. So I would do everything. Like I would go to parties and put pennies in my pocket and don't drink out, everything. But then I would still overdrink. And again, just all the stuff that you're listening, I was caught in the loop. And I finally got back. Through willpower, got to where I could get to where I could moderate. I'm putting this in air quotes because if 3 large glasses of wine is moderation, that's that. But I got to where I'm like, okay. And I refer to it as, and I think I may have heard it from this term from you or somewhere. It's not my term, but I love it. The moderation monster. I was stuck in the moderation monster for years, which may be even more painful than full on out of control drinking because it was just years of being stuck. And I think I just thought, well, this is my lot in life. Like, this is it. I got to live like this, even though I felt like something was weird. I remember telling my sister, I'm not physically addicted because I can stop for days and I don't need it. But I remember saying like 10 years ago, I think I'm psychologically addicted. But at the time, nobody was talking about that. But I'm like, and my sister was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, I fought this moderation monster for years. Awful. I just hated it. I expended so much energy. I looked to other people like I must be, oh yeah, Amy overdrank sometimes, definitely over drinking sometimes, but it looks like to society, I was a moderate drinker. But what they didn't see is how exhausted I was when I came in at night. And I'm like, oh my God, I kept it to 3 glasses. And I'm like, this is so stupid, right? But yet I still thought I needed it. And then it was like, there's your book. And I read your book and it was just like, I think I read it in one night and then I read it again. And I mean, I didn't stop drinking immediately, but I did what you said, which is stop trying to stop and just, I followed your book. I even did I had one of your amazing coaches, Wendy. And I did the whole thing. And I one day remember just kind of, I would still like try to test the drinking, but at this point, like I just started not wanting to do it as much. And Arlen and I have talked about it. It was kind of the same thing. Like, you're like, wait a second, I just don't think I wanted as much. And then one day, I know I stopped drinking in like December of 2020 or November. I don't even remember the day because it's not like I said, I'm never drinking again. It's just like, I was like, wait, I haven't drank and I don't want to. And I haven't since. And it's just all because of you and that power of knowing the science behind it, what's really happening, the truth, the saying, you'll know the truth and it'll set you free. And it did. And yeah, so here I am today, don't desire it. It's just not even a thought, right? Like, and it's such a gift. Okay, I've been prattling along for way too long, but does that give you an idea of like kind of my journey?
I love that. I love that. No, that's awesome. That's so good. So were there any, within that, were there any sort of very specific stories or moments of times where you were like, something needs to be different, or awareness, I guess?
I could give you like 750. Yeah, I mean, the times where you're, where I would say I'd be out on a business trip because I travel globally, and I'd be going into a dinner in London or Paris and be like, okay, you only have 4 pennies in your pocket. So stop after one glass of wine. And then the next thing you know, you wake up at 3 o'clock in your hotel room and you're like, oh God, like why did I have to drink more? Right. And then just knowing that this is terrible. Like this has got to stop. Or I'll tell you one that was, it wasn't like I'm, totally out of my mind, but it was a poignant moment of, okay, something's got to go here. There was a group of us, family, parents with their kids, someone's house. It was probably a college football game. Nobody was really out of control, but the parents were all drinking, as the parents always do. And we had this big cooler of all of the drinks for the kids, Cokes, Sprites, whatever. And my oldest son, he was probably like, I don't know, 8 at the time. He ran back to get another Coke. And I said, Jack, but I think that's like your 3rd Coke. And he, not being smart, he wasn't being a smarty. He kind of just looked at me and my friends and he goes, but you're like on your 3rd or 4th wine. And it just was like, boom, like, yeah. It was moments like that you knew, right? And just added, and he was right. Like I'm sitting here saying moderation, but yet we're pounding wine. It just didn't, right? So it's just all this stuff, like none of this computes. Or, I always think like, or like on a Wednesday, if I go to the grocery store and I'm like, don't go down that wine aisle, don't go down the wine aisle, like having to avoid the wine aisle so you don't go down it. Like I always think about like, I love key lime pie, Annie, I love it. And I have to use moderation with it, but I don't have to avoid the bakery when I go to Publix. Like I just don't, I'll get it on the weekend. Right. But like all these things just don't add up. Right. It just doesn't make any sense. And again, I go back to it was just always this one thing that I knew was tripping me up. And while I wasn't like out getting DUIs and whatever, I was absolutely living below my level, 100%. And I wasn't being the best mom, person, professional. I probably have a lot of willpower. So I was getting by, but it was just a waste, right? Just total waste. So, I mean, I could give you a bazillion stories of just things that
that's great.
Like so just true. Even noticing, even like sort of, I just felt like I always felt like it was something inside me is like, this isn't normal, but it wasn't to your book that I started to go, oh my God, now I know what it wasn't normal, because it was normal to everyone else. And I wanted to do it. Right. But like, even like, it would always bother me like that book clubs was really just drinking, or that play dates were really just the moms drinking. I mean, I was participating in it, but as I was like, this is weird. Like we aren't even paying attention to our kids. This is, so you know what I mean? It was like that, always that undercurrent that I knew something wasn't right. And my gut and my soul told me that. But yet my head was like, but this is the elixir of life. So this is how you adult. This is how you adult. This is how it's 5 o'clock somewhere, cognitive dissonance. So I just kept on going and stayed in mental pain. And, I mean, I don't know if that's I can give you a more specific story if you want one, but that's just kind of.
No, that's great. I mean, that's absolutely great. And then Amy, one of the things that I think is so cool about you, well, like your passion and your energy and all sorts of stuff. But once you kind of had a switch, I feel like you really were like, hey, people need to know this. You like kind of took up a mantle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you a little bit. I'm going to tie that back to that. So, but I'm going to tell you a little story. So this is like years of me trying to like gradually getting better. Something's not right. So in 2019, I don't even remember if I consciously said, I'm going to like do this as like an experiment. I just remember thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to test myself. If this really is the elixir of life and it makes everything great, then I'm going to use 2019 and I'm not going to drink on any business trip and I'm not going to drink on any vacation. I mean, I drank, but I would not drink on a business trip on a vacation. So I remember when I first went, it was January, we were in London and I was nervous because I was always the one that's like, order another bottle of wine. and I thought, how am I going to handle this? Do I lie? And I remember just saying, I'm just going to say the truth. Like, what can I do? Because I'm usually pretty open about it. So the first thing went around and they're like, Sasser, what do you want? Everybody calls me by my maiden name, last name. I'm like, I'm good. I'm just going to stick with water. And they're like, what? And of course they're like, what? Because I'm usually the one like,
Yeah.
And I said, no. And they're like, you're not drinking. And I'm like, guys, it's too easy for me to overdrink. And I lost my privileges. I'm not gonna do it. And so it was easier. Of course, a couple people questioned like, what, but they left me alone. And what the interesting thing, Annie, and you know this, because it happens to you. I had more people come up to me throughout that year going, I think I need to cut back too, because, all that kind of stuff. But so I was very public that I was kind of doing this, and then went through all of 2019. And you know what? It was the best business year I've ever had. And it was the best vacations I've ever had. And right after 2019 is when I found your book. It was almost like everything was like, okay, here you go. Now you need to read Annie's book. And it all started happening. But when it did click with your book, yes, to your point, I really was like, I can't sit still with this information. I'm not anti-drinking. I'm not about like that. Like, we're all adults, like you say, Annie, like, do what you want. Like, I got friends that drink. I don't care. Like, that's cool. But I just was like, there's more people like me that are staying silent because they're scared, or because we're not supposed to talk about this. So I really was, very focused on, this is a wellness issue. This is not even an alcohol issue. This is we talk about all sorts of things that are bad, that are good for us. Like, I'm cutting back on sugar, I'm cutting back on gluten, and we openly talk about that. So like, why can't we say I'm cutting back on alcohol, or I'm not drinking? So I started just thinking, okay, I can't go write a book. What can I do with my resources right here with with me to spread the word in a non-judgmental, like, just, hey, whatever, non-judgmental way. And then I thought, well, I can use my voice, or I can, like, when I realized that Arlen Hamilton had read your book, which I did not know before I read your book. I actually was, everyone, your viewers probably don't really follow the startup community very much. I'm sorry, I should turn my phone.
No worries.
Your listeners and viewers may not follow the startup and innovation ecosystem, the tech innovation, but you know that Arlen Hamilton is just a big deal in the startup world. And so I followed her on Twitter anyway, because that was my job. But when I saw her post something about a thank you to you in Naked Mind, I was like, oh my God, she read the same book. So I remember reaching out to her and I said, you don't know me, but I want to write a piece it was March. I said, I want to write a piece on focus on, for March is women's International Women's Month. I want to write a piece on 5 pivots that females made that changed their life. And I want yours to be about alcohol. So I sent her a draft, and she asked me a couple of questions, like, mainly like, Amy, I'm not anti-alcohol. I said, me neither. And she gave me permission to write about it. And it just opened up so many doors. People were coming to me asking, like, what was that? The conversation was able to be started, right? And then I got in my head, how can I get these two on stage at a technology conference, which is where I called up my friend and CMO at Startup Grind. And I said, I have a crazy idea, but we need to start talking about these wellness and productivity things as it relates to entrepreneurs, because productivity is everything for us. And to her credit, she was like, yeah, we haven't done it before, but if you can get them, we'll do it. And thank goodness you guys did it. And yeah, and it was great. Y'all were so awesome. And I cannot tell you the LinkedIn messages, the people there that were coming out to me, but people that were saying, like, wow, that was really cool. But Annie, on my LinkedIn was blowing up for people in like Germany going, oh my God, Amy, I'm watching this. This is amazing that these people are talking about this, right? I mean, you probably got that same reaction, but we do need to talk about it. But it's a wellness issue. It's not I feel like that's what it needs to be. This is about wellness and mental health. And if your drinking doesn't bother you or your mental health, awesome. That's cool. It was bothering me. So I want to talk about it. So then there's for the people that do feel the same way, that they can talk about it. Right. And you said something, Annie, and I don't want you to put you on the spot here, but I thought it was brilliant. And I was backstage, so I couldn't write it down, but you said something about the traits that most entrepreneurs and founders have almost lay over exactly to, can you talk about that? Because I thought that was cool.
I'd love to. And yeah, and first of all, Amy, I just want to say, like, the fact that like you got Arlen and I on the stage to have that conversation, which was so refreshing and enlightening and surprising for the audience. You know, we're at this startup grind, like one of the largest startup conferences in the world. Everybody is just focused on, you know, Web3 and DAOs and venture capital and stuff. And then here Arlen and I are, and we're like, yeah, you know what the real secret is? It's not drinking. It was just like the coolest thing. And I don't know, I'm going to forever remember that, and flying into Silicon Valley and doing that whole thing, and just how you just almost single-handedly said, hey, let's open up this conversation in this way, in this audience. And it was just amazing. So anyway, I have a lot of gratitude, and I just think you're just such a powerhouse when it comes to energy and all of that stuff. But when I was on stage,
Amy, all I did is open the door. You guys did all the work. So my job was easy, right? Yeah. So it was
somebody
awesome.
has to care enough to open the door.
Yes,
I mean, that's the thing, care enough and be unafraid enough and understand that this is not that conversation, that old antiquated stigma-based, anti-alcohol, fear-based, you know, sobriety, recovery conversation. This is a new, different productivity, life-giving, you know, conversation. And I think that differentiation that you saw so clearly and then brought to other people, and you packaged it. And Arlen, of course, in her persona and who she is, also packaged it in this way that's like, no, this is new. This is not that. This is something else. And it was just the coolest. But so when I was doing my research on different things, my husband and I just had this back and forth about addictive personality, because he would sit there and he'd be like, but Annie, and I'd say, I don't like, I hate that. I hate addictive personality. I hate it when you say I have an addictive, I just hate it. Would just get under my skin, right? Yeah. Something's wrong with that. And he'd be like, but you can't tell me it's not true. Like, look at certain people, look at how certain people do this, and look at how certain people do that. So in typical, you know, Annie fashion, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to find out. So I started just researching like addictive personality. Where did it come from? What are the traits of it? What are the different aspects to an addictive personality? What are the different elements to it? And actually, there's been research done after my research that I'll share in just a second, but that is just like confirms all this in the most mind-blowing way, because they bring all this neurology and brain science into it. But at this time, 8 years ago, it was relatively limited, but there was 5 or 7 different characteristics of somebody who, if you put them all together, had a propensity to become more addicted to substances. Those exact same characteristics were the same characteristics that, if you put them together, created entrepreneurs.
That's what it was. I was like mind blown when you said that. Yeah.
And it was like, okay, it was like, you know, openness to new experiences, like a real fixation on things. There was like 4 or 5. Anyway, it's all in This Naked Mind, the book, but it was amazing, the overlay, right? Yeah. And it is, and I've talked to so many entrepreneurs who are like, it's 2 sides of the same coin. The stuff that makes me believe that I can change the world is also the stuff that can be so painful that I overdrink. And then this book here, Driven by Douglas Brackman, anybody who is in this kind of category, they've actually taken it down to a percentage of the population who actually has different alleles, like in their DNA, and how those things affect, yes, you will type very high for, quote, alcoholism, but you will also be the only people who are going to be the Steve Jobs of the world, and the Elon Musk, and the, you know, Richard Branson, and like the world changing people who are bringing around like the change. Like it's an overlay. It's exactly the same.
It's so cool. And I think that was such a power. All of your whole conversation with Arlen was great, but that was so, I think that a lot of people came up to me and said, wow. I'm like, yeah, that's it. It's amazing. So cool.
Yeah. So cool. Well, it's just the best.
Can I ask you, what was your feedback? Because of that, I think that was your first, like, I guess, technology conference to have that conversation, and you yourself are a founder, right? What was your experience, and what was the reception that you got from people from that?
It was great. I think that it was really, I mean, wholly positive. And it was interesting because I had a lot of people reaching out to me for things that had nothing to do with alcohol, but were very much in the like tech space or
Sure.
collaborations or different things like that. But what was really interesting is that the audience that I have, has been corporate people, because
Yeah.
that was my journey. Before I was a founder of anything, I was in
Yeah.
corporate. And so, and moms, a
Mhm.
lot of women. And it was just, it opened up just a diversity of conversation. And I
Yeah.
think especially among men who, because that is the startup world is still quite masculine. And it was just like, oh, wow, this can be a superpower. And I've actually had conversations with people who entrepreneurs who since they've stopped drinking have been able like add $1 million to their bottom line within
Oh,
6 months. Like just these success stories that are mind blowing because the time and effort and mental noise and capacity that they were putting in, their brains were using on this, should I drink? Should I not drink? How much? When? Like internal dialogue suddenly could be focused on, and it is about rechanneling that kind of obsessive nature, that fixation, that need for new, right? The need for variety, like all of those things are part of those personality traits that create people. And it's just about like rechanneling it into something that's really useful and helpful. I heard this, and I don't know where I heard it, so I'm going to quote it wrong. I've heard it from a few different sources, but anyway, I'm not going to give a source, but I heard this idea that how we fulfill our internal like desires,
mhm.
we can do it in so many different ways. And we can measure those ways with like, are they good for us? Are they good for the people we love? And are they good for the world? Or are they bad for us, bad for the people we love and bad for the world? And if you were kind of going to Venn diagram that out or like map it out on a little check mark, you'd get 3 or 4 different types of things. And if I look at how I filled my needs,
Mhm.
like my need for variety, my need to feel connected with other people, my need to feel important, my need to feel like fun, my need for fun, right? All of those things. When I filled it with alcohol, it was bad for me, bad for the people I loved,
Yeah.
bad for the world. But when
Yeah.
I rechannel that into like, writing books or speaking on a stage or hosting a podcast, guess what? That's good for me. It's good for the people I love, and it's good for the world. And I think that perspective and that flip is a lot of the feedback I got. It's like, oh, I can rechannel this. And I think so many people, another piece of feedback that I've gotten from so many entrepreneurs is like, you're the first person who told me I didn't have to.
Yes. Yes.
And I
Yes.
was like, I know, like we all
Crazy,
have
right?
this have to mentality when it comes to drinking.
And that's the crazy part. That's the culture mind. I don't want to cuss. I won't cuss on your show,
Oh,
but
you can cuss.
you
We
know,
marked every episode explicit just in case. So,
okay. Yeah, it's just insanity. But like, yes, that's the thing. I love the rechanneling because it really is, we were able to, if you think, when we think about all the mental waste that we've done, and that for someone like an entrepreneur or anyone, it could be anybody in your life, but like we're talking about entrepreneurs, to think that they can increase even 10%, 15%, 20%, like that's massive. Like that is, and clarity of thought and being able to, this even goes into things like, I see this a lot too. Like we know that, it's going to increase your anxiety. We know that it's going to throw your you've just like biochemically jacked yourself up from the moment you start drinking. And I see a lot with like people's inability to self-regulate, right? So they're more emotional, they're more irritable, they don't make clear decisions because they're hungover. And then, as you know, what's the cure for that? Go drink some more. And it's just so in the culture with tech and entrepreneurism and hardcore play hard that, like no one told, I love that person said, no one told me I didn't have to drink. And that's just like, wow. Right. But, it's crazy. It's one of your, I hope I can use her name, but Wendy, you're awesome.
Yeah.
Naked Mind coach. Love her. By the time I got to her, I was like, she was like, yeah, you're pretty good. Like what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to make sure that I don't fall back into those habits. And she said, okay, where's one of your triggers? And I said, cause I'm pretty, I'm a hard worker and I'm just like, boom, boom, boom. So I wake up early. I do, my alarm clock goes off at 4:15 unless I didn't sleep well, right? I'm very scheduled. And I work hard. And so she goes, when did you feel that urge? And I'm like, it's almost like I felt like I deserved to have a glass of wine, right? Very common, like, deserve. And I remember she said, well, channel that into something else that you enjoy. What else do you love? I'm like, well, I love learning and I love podcasts. She goes, go on a walk. Like, and what I realized is that my running wasn't an outlet. I had to run. That's part of who I am. But that's not going to fulfill that need, that 5 o'clock witching hour, right? And when I started doing that, Annie, what I realized, and your book talks about, is that I kind of rode the wave of that need, and it just went away because I was on my, like, that need or that desire to want to drink just went away because I was giving myself something. I was learning. I was on my podcast. I was walking, right? It was just a channeling that kind of trigger, that urge into something else. That is, I mean, it's just incredible. But yeah, I said I would not fangirl you on this to behave myself, but I mean, like, your book is just, it's life-changing for people. And it was life-changing for me. And I just want other people, if one person listens to this and goes, oh my God, I was kind of like Amy, then that's awesome, right? Because then maybe that person will go tell someone else, and not in a judgmental, like, again, like, I still hang with people that drink. That's cool. I don't care. But
Right.
if they get curious and ask me, that's awesome, right? Like, because it is just it's freedom. It's just freedom to be, sitting here drinking my ginger ale and not feeling like I need a glass of wine, right? I mean,
Yeah, I love that. That's the word for it, is just feeling free and not feeling, I don't know, for me, when I would not be drinking without like having changed my mindset, I never felt free. And I just felt like I even felt more stuck not drinking, emotionally, mentally,
yep,
more stuck.
yep.
And that just was terrible.
Yeah, because you, again, using that cognitive dissonance, we weren't free. Like, I could do it. I mean, some of my friends still are kind of like, wait, so you don't want to drink at all? It's bizarre. They can't understand it. And I was there one time where I'd be like, what? You don't drink, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I said, and I try to couch it in like a more of a wellness thing. And I'm like, all I can say is I used to eat Big Macs, and I just don't eat those either anymore because I don't crave them and they're not good for me. Like, it's kind of the same thing. It just doesn't, it doesn't compute. But it's just hard because you look around, and it was your book that finally got me to look around and go, it's everywhere. Like, we're soaked in alcohol. No wonder people are kind of like, I need it, right? Like, it's crazy. But I mean, I was a pretty highly productive person, but like, since I don't have to do the moderation monster anymore, which was exhausting, right? Like, now that that's free, I'm getting my master's. I'm more productive. I can be more creative, all the stuff we know, right? And it's just, I don't miss it, not one bit. Like, I feel like it's a privilege. I don't have to drink. Like, what a gift. That's the beauty of it.
That's amazing.
I mean,
What
I'm
are you
telling
getting?
you things, but
What are you getting your master's in?
psychology.
Amazing.
I know it sounds weird I'm a communications, a marketing communications person, but actually, so I was thinking, Annie, like, I just love to learn. I always have. I've always been kind of like, not even like, I like the process, not even the end. Just, I love learning. I'm sure most people do. And so I knew I wanted to go back and do something. And finally, I was free of, I had so much more mental energy, right? And I wasn't battling the moderation monster. And I thought to myself, I'm 49. I don't want to go back and get an MBA. I'm not going to go back and get a master's for my career because I don't want to do that. So I was thinking, I can't think of something that's better for a communications executive than learning psychology, but it's going to hopefully make me a more insightful and better person, mother, friend, executive, right? To just kind of understand a little bit more about why we do what we do. And it's been fascinating too, because so much of what and your book has taught me, we're learning, right? So like, you're just like, wow. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And it's been great. Like,
I love human behavior psychology. It's like, gosh, why we do what we do. So fascinating.
it's funny. One of my, we were doing something on was cognitive dissonance. And she said, our professor said, you have to write a paper on something that on cognitive dissonance and a real thing. So I wrote about mine with alcohol and went all through it. And she was, even my professor was like, oh my God, not because my writing was so great, but because the correlation between drinking. She's like, this could be a thesis. Like, you should think about, like, this is wow. But she even was like, this made me think about alcohol in a different way, right? Because again, we don't think about it and just how bizarre it is, but it's been fascinating.
That's interesting. I should figure that out, how to submit it as a thesis and get a PhD. So then people stop giving me crap for just not being a PhD.
No, you totally should. Because what's so funny is she was saying that, I was like, I'm not smart enough to do that. But you came to mind. I'm like, God, Amy Grace, 100% you could do it because you've done all the work. But and get published and get a real academic, be a PhD too. So.
Oh, so good. Well, this has just been so awesome, Amy. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you the question I always ask at the end, which is, if you were going to go back in time and talk to Amy, and well, first, can you just explain the pennies in the pocket just for people who might not understand that technique? I kind of glossed over that, and I realized that people might not be familiar with.
Oh, sure. So when I was battling the whole, like, oh, I've got to learn to moderate because something's wrong with me. I would put like 4 pennies or whatever, 5 if I wanted to drink, in my pocket. And every time I drank, I would take one out. Right. And so it was just, I was doing anything to help me stay in moderation. So in a perfect world, when the pennies were gone, you didn't drink anymore. Sometimes that worked, Andy. Sometimes I didn't care, because after your 3 glasses in, you're not exactly, your frontal lobes have shut down and you're just like, party on. But that's what it was. It was just, really, it's kind of sad, but it was a way to try to keep me, when I knew that I would have a willpower challenge, it was a way to help me, trick my way into it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So if you were going to go back in time and tell the Amy who was with the pennies, trying to, she couldn't moderate, but she'd come home so exhausted from the effort, and you were going to tell her about what life is like now, what would you say?
There was never anything wrong with you. It was always the alcohol. Just keep going. That's probably because that was the main thing. Like, society was telling me, oh, it's because you're an alcoholic. And I was like, but I'm not. I would even go to AA meetings, Annie, and I'm like, but I'm not that. I'm certainly not a responsible drinker. I would just say, yeah, you're not broken. You're not, you're not, it's not you. You're drinking.
That's so good.
You're drinking
Not
a
you.
drug.
Yeah.
And, it's the same thing. Like if I was, snorting cocaine, anyway, you get it. I would just tell myself, it's not you. It's not you. You're okay. You're not broken. Because we're not.
So much. I was just scrolling through TikTok with my kid the other day, and one of those TikToks came on. It's like the 20 most dangerous drugs in the world. And then it was going through them all, heroin, cocaine. I was like, are they going to get it right? Are they going to get it right? Are they going to get it right? Number 2 is blah, blah, blah. And then of course, number 1 is alcohol. I was like, all right. Yep. So because I know that from my research, but it's amazing how hidden that fact is, that like when you say you're drinking a drug, why do we even differentiate? Like it is not only a drug, it is hands down, without a doubt, according to multiple data points and sources, the most dangerous drug on the planet. So it's
absolutely. Yeah.
But well, this has just been awesome, Amy. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's just been such a pleasure.
No, thank you for having me on. And thank you for writing your book.
You're welcome.
Hey, it's Scott Pinyard, head coach here at This Naked Mind. Are you ready to make instant changes to your drinking? The answer is not in restriction or deprivation, and you don't need more self-control. I am here to tell you that you can break your patterns and habits and finally feel liberated from alcohol. You can return to a life where alcohol is small and irrelevant for you. It's a non-issue. Take it or leave it. Annie has 3 secrets to control your drinking, and she and I are going to teach them all live in a special 3-day free virtual event. Learn the 3 secrets to control your drinking and make changes instantly live with us. Don't miss this amazing event. Learn more and save your spot today at controlalcohollive.com. We can't wait to see you there. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.